Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to Wix Wiz. Today we're going to be talking about Twilio OTP verification, or one-time password verification, and that is the thing that you are probably very familiar with these days, where you put your phone number in, you get a code to your phone through an SMS, and then you need to provide that code to the system in order to verify your identity. So we're going to be learning how to use the Twilio package and API in order to integrate that with your Wix website so you could use it in forms or member registration or login or whatever you may choose. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to want to do is head to twilio.com, and you're going to go ahead and click either here, Start for Free or Start for Free, and set up a Twilio account. You might need to verify a phone number in order to do that. Once you have your account set up, what we are going to be looking for is this developers, and here we have a list of different kind of resources and documentation for developers. And specifically, we're going to be using this verify service over here. So verify, you can also find this from this twilios.com /docs page. And over here, we have verify. So as you see, Twilio offers many different services related to sending out emails, SMS, WhatsApp API, etc. And we are really just looking to use Twilio in order to verify a phone number at the moment. So that is all bundled here inside of the Twilio Verify service. So now that we reach the documentation, we see that the first thing that we need to do in order to set up this Verify API is to set up a verification service. Okay, that's right over here, step 1. And there's two ways that we could do it. We could set it up using the API, or we could set it up in the Twilio Verify console. And if you are not so tech savvy, then this is the option that I recommend. I also found it quite easy to use in general, so I don't really see any reason why not. So let's click over here, and we're going to go to the Twilio Verify console. And you can see here that I already have one service that I set up originally, and I'm going to set up a new service for this demonstration. So I'm just going to click over here and create new, and I'll call this Twilio demo. And here you can decide what the verification channels are. So what channels you want to use in order to let people verify their phone number. So you could choose from SMS, WhatsApp, email, voice. I'm just going to choose SMS at the moment, but you can choose whichever ones are relevant for your business. And go ahead and click continue and enable fraud guard. Sure, let's enable that. And great, so now it's creating my verification service. And you'll see here that we have several things. So we have the service ID, which we're going to need to use later on. And here we have all of the different services, and here SMS is enabled. And if you decide later on that you want to enable one of the other ones, then you just go to that channel and then enable it or disable it. So that's what we have here inside of this service. The next thing we're going to want to do is go back to the documentation. So I'm going to do that through over here. And we are going to create our first verification. Okay, so we're here back at the Verify API, and we already set up our verification service. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is send a verification token. So what we're going to be doing is using the Twilio package, the Node.js package. There are other options. For example, if you wanted to use just regular fetch, you could call the endpoint over here that's given in the base URL. But since Twilio has been nice enough to set up this NPM package for us, I think we're going to use it. So I'm going to go ahead to our site, which I have right over here. And I'm going to go to the Packages and Apps area, and I'm going to install package from NPM, and I'm just going to look for Twilio. Great, so here we have the Twilio library. I'm going to go ahead and hit install. And here we have some instructions about how to import the package, and I'm going to do that in a new web module that we're going to create. So I'm going to add a web module. I'm just going to call it Twilio. And here is where we are going to add all of our code. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function. So const send verification code. And this is just going to be a wrapper function that we're going to call, and that will essentially call the Twilio npm package that was set up and send out a verification code. So let's go over to Twilio, and I'm just going to copy everything that we have here. So I'm just copy that and go back to our site and paste that right over here. We don't need these comments, but we do need to set up is these things. So we have account SID, which needs to be set up, auth token, which needs to be set up. Okay, so the account SID is, if I go over here so this is the service SID. We're going to need that a little later. For the account SID, we need to go over here, over here to account. And here we have API keys and tokens. So I'm going to go and open that in a new tab. And these are my general tokens for my Twilio account. Okay, so I need to go ahead and send a verification code for access. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so this is the page with API keys, auth tokens, very secret stuff. So you're not going to really want to give anybody access to this. This here are the two credentials that we were just talking about. So one is the account SID, and the other is the auth token. And this auth token, as you can see, it's super, super secret. So I'm not going to be showing you that. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking both of these, the account SID and the auth token, and I'm going to be storing it inside of my secrets manager. So this is the dashboard for the Wix site that we are using in this demonstration. And right over here under Developer Tools, Secrets Manager, I have the option to store secret keys that I don't want anybody to gain access to. And I'm going to go ahead and click Store Secret. And then I'm going to go to my account and keys. I'm going to take first the account SID. And I'm going to go and store that over here. And if you see a situation like this where the cursor is way lower than the end of the actual value, you're just going to want to double check that and make sure that the cursor is right over there. Otherwise, it'll give you problems when you're copying things, when you're actually using it in the code in the front end, in the back end. And here, in terms of name, so I'm just going to call it Twilio account SID. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video for a second and store my secret auth token, and then I'll be right back to show you the next steps. So now that I have the Twilio auth token and account SID stored in my secrets manager, I'm going to go back to the website, and here in the backend, I'm going to import getSecret from Wix secrets backend. And this will basically allow me to import those two secrets that I just stored. And here I'm just going to say const, or we could actually just do this, const account SID. So instead of process.env, process.env is for using environment variables in like a Node.js backend. But since we're here in Wix, we need to do it in a special way, which is using getSecret. So I'm just going to get rid of that. And instead, we're going to have here getSecret. And here we're going to have Twilio account SID. And here we're going to have something similar with the Twilio auth token. Okay, one important thing here is that these are both promises, so we need to use the await keyword beforehand. Okay, great. So we have the account SID set up. And here, in terms of the services, so this is the service ID that I had showed you earlier. So if you go into your verify service, here we have the service SID. So I'm just going to copy that over. and go back to my backend, and I'm going to say const service ID, and that will be equal to this. And then here, we're going to add the service ID. Sorry, I shouldn't have that over there. Excellent. Okay, so this pretty much sets it up. And now I need to essentially put a phone number here, which is my phone number. Since I don't really want to share my phone number in this video, what I'm going to be doing is I'll create my phone number as a variable in another file, and I'm going to import it into this file to send the SMS. So let's go ahead and do that now. If you're following along with that video, then you can just stick your phone number right over here, and we are going to give it a spin. Okay, so I have my phone number imported as a variable from an external file. And just one more thing to note here is that the channel that we're using is SMS, but if you're using a different channel, then you are going to want to change this out for the channel that you are using based on the instructions in the documentation. Okay, so supported channels are SMS, call, email, and WhatsApp. So those are the variables that you would be using there. And let's go back to our site. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the export keyword right over here. And that will help me run this function in the backend so I can test it out. So let's go ahead and click run. And I encourage you to do that while you're trying this out as well, just to make sure that all the code is working. So the function itself was returned with undefined. And here we have pending. So if I go here, that essentially means this is the console.log that we have here, so verification.status. And this means that we are waiting for the person to input and verify the code that they have been sent. And I'm taking a look at my phone right now. Okay, so it took a moment to come, but now it finally went through, and you can see right over here on my phone that I got the SMS from Twilio with the code. And now what we have to do is to set up the option for you to actually verify that code. So send the code back to Twilio and say, test out this code. So right over here inside the Verify API, step 3 is check the verification code. So let's click right over there. And here you could see that the code snippet here has changed a little bit, and it's quite similar, but the only thing that's really different is that instead here we're using this verification checks method instead of the, what was it called? I think verification method. So let's go ahead and copy this code. And in the back end of my site, I'm going to create a new function, which is going to be called check verification code. And this is also going to be an asynchronous function. And whoops. And inside, I'm going to just paste the code that we copied over. And we have to go through a slightly similar process here. So I'm going to get rid of the comments. And I'm going to copy over these 3 variables that we had already defined earlier. I'm going to switch this out for the service ID. And here, I'm going to also change this back to my phone number. And here for the code, this is something that we are going to want to change based on a per time basis. So I'm going to actually pass that in here as a variable and get rid of the code that we have over there. So whatever code I send here back with the as a parameter here inside of the function, that is the code that it's going to verify. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And I'm going to pass in the code that I had just received in my SMS. So that would be 867365. And these codes only last for a few minutes. So don't try and verify my phone number using the same code. It won't help you. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And it was returned with undefined. And you can see here that in the console, we got approved. Okay, so that means that I got the right code. If I was to try and send another code, it would have been not approved. And if I go back to our backend, so basically we're done with setting up our backend. There's just a few things that I want to change because one is that we are going to be passing in this phone number as a variable, as a parameter, because we're going to be verifying different phone numbers. That means that we need to add phone number here as a parameter, and I'm going to pass it right over here. So to phone number. And the same is going to be over here. So this function will have two parameters, and this one will just have one. And here I'm going to change this also to that phone number. The second thing is that instead of just using just consoling, just logging verification.status or verification.check.status, verification check.status, what I actually want to do is I want to pass this information to the front end. Because what we're going to have essentially is somebody that is trying to verify their phone number here, and we need to pass this information about whether the verification has been sent or not, or whether the verification has been approved or not from the back end to the front end so that we can change the UI accordingly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change this method here that Twilio built out from .then to async await. So I'm going to say const verification equals to await client.verify, etc. And I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to return verification dot status. And I'm going to do something similar right over here. So I'm going to change this to const verification check, and this will be await client.verify, etc. And then here at the end, I'm going to return verification check dot status. Okay, so now that we're done building out the backend, we can move to the front end and essentially import these functions in order to allow the user to verify their phone number. So I'm going to go here to my front end code, and I don't really have anything here at the moment. So I'm going to add first the onReady function for Wix. So w or dot no dot w dot onReady, I think. Yeah. And usually this will come ready. I guess I just erased it accidentally. And here we have a function. And what we're going to be doing inside of this onReady function is essentially allowing the user to send their phone number and then send their verification code in. So I'm going to import the two backend functions that we wrote. So import, and here we have send verification code. Whoops, copy, paste, and we have check verification code. And we're importing those from backend, and I called it Twilio. Maybe you called it something else. Sorry, from. Excellent. And we are going to program this send button. So we're going to say send button dot on click, and we're going to take this area code and we're going to take the phone number and we're going to combine them together. So const area code equals to area code dropdown dot value and const phone number equals to phone number dot value. These are the names that I gave to these inputs here. And one thing that we're going to need to do before this will actually work is to set up this area code dropdown. So what I did is I have a file here with an array of area codes, and each area code has a name, a dial code, and a code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to display these area codes here inside of this area code dropdown. So let me go ahead and import. I'm going to import area codes from public/area codes. And I'm putting this in a public file because there's nothing secret about it. It's just a random list of area codes. If you choose to, you could also store this in a collection, and you can use Wix query to query for that. I just think it's a little simpler to store it kind of in a variable because it's something that's immutable. It's not going to be changing. So let's go ahead and actually program this area code dropdown. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to say area code dropdown dot options equals to area codes dot map. Okay, so because essentially when we put options for a dropdown, what we need to do is pass in for each option a label and a value. So I need to take these area codes, which are built in this format, and change it into a value and option format, where value is what's going to be actually passed into our function, and label is just what the user will see in the dropdown. So if I go, back to our front end, I'm going to map it so that for each area, let's call it, I'm going to have label of code plus dial code. So I'm going to do here area dot code. I'm going to put this in a template literal. So area dot code. Close this up. Area dot code and space area dot dial code. And then for the value, I'm going to have just the dial code. I think it was area dot dial code, the one that's actually part of the phone number. Okay, so this. And then once a user picks it, they should be picking one of these dial codes. So I'm going to go ahead and go home. And let's just check that the options dropdown is working. So I'm going to go ahead into preview mode and try this. Okay, so it's working. It's not displaying very well because the dropdown isn't wide enough. But if I go back to the editor, and let's just make this a little wider. And obviously you could see here that my focus is not beauty and design, but really just functionality here. So if I go to this dropdown, yeah, so we could see we have all our area codes over here. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the editor. And now that we have our area code and our phone number, I'm just going to say const full number will be equal to area code plus phone number. And then I'm going to call the send verification code function. But remember that this is asynchronous, so I'm going to say const verification status equals await and send verification code. And then we are going to need to put this as an async function because we have the await keyword here. And here, remember, we need to pass in the phone number, so full number. And then if verification status equals pending, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal the code input and the confirm button. So let's group these two together. And I'm going to call this confirm group. And if the status equals to pending, so this confirm group will be collapsed or hidden. So I'm going to choose hidden. And then if the verification code is sent, then we are going to say confirm group dot show. And if we want, we could also go ahead and add, let's say, text here. And this will be for our messages, so like errors or stuff like that. So let's say here message. And let's say we could say if no verification status, then we are going to have our error message. So message.text will be, okay, so you know what, I'm gonna change this up a little bit. So let's say, let's have it as an if-else statement. So if the verification status is pending, then we are going to show the confirm group, and we're also going to show a message that says, you have been sent an SMS with a code. And I'm going to show the message. Okay, so this is just a really very simple success message. I mean, you can change it up and do things a little differently if you want. And this will just be an error message. So there was an issue sending your code. Please try again. And we're not really specifying what the issue is. If we wanted, we could try and go deeper into error handling and kind of say, oh, your phone number is wrong. Oh, there's something wrong with Twilio. Oh, but here I'm just kind of giving a very generic error message. So let's just go over what we did again. So we got the area code and the phone number. We combine it into a full phone number with area code and the actual number. And then we call the verification code, send verification code function with the phone number. And then we check to see what the status that we get back is. So if we get back a status of pending, then we know that this worked. We sent out a code, and we tell the user that they need to check for their code, and we also give them the option to input the code in the confirm group of elements here. If we don't get back pending, so that means verification status might be undefined, it might be error, it might be something, then we are going to have this. There was an issue sending your code, please try again. It's also worth wrapping this all in a try catch. So I'm going to go over here. And then here we have a catch, and we can do basically the same thing that we're doing here. Because there's two situations that we might get errors in. So one is that if Twilio actually sends us some kind of verification status that isn't pending, and the other one is that we just have some other problem with waiting for this promise to be fulfilled. And in that case, we're also going to want to display an error message. Okay, so that's that part. And the next thing that we need to do is set up the actual checking of the verification code. And that's going to happen when we click this confirm button. So I'm going to set up an event listener for the confirm button here. Confirm button dot on click. And this is also going to be an asynchronous callback function here. And what we're going to be doing is, so what we need is we still need this phone number, okay, that we submit here. So there's two options for this. Either we can just use these same three variables here for the phone number. Another option would be to store the full number in a global variable. And the reason that I think a global variable is a better idea is that if for some reason the inputs here change in between the sending of the code and the verification of the code, and then we'll have an issue. Again, you could, for example, disable these inputs once you send out the code. But if you're not disabling the inputs, then the user can change it. So storing this in a global variable, so let's say let full number. And then here, instead of const full number, we just say we're assigning full number. And then we can use this full number also in the verification process when we're verifying the code. So then I don't need to use all of this over here. And all I really need to do is to say const verification status equals await, and this time we're using the check verification code. And here we need to pass in the full number, and we also need to pass in the code. So let's get the code. So const code will be equal to our code input dot value. And the code input is this input right over here where they're supposed to put in the code. And then I could pass this code here as well. And in terms of handling the verification, what we're going to do is we're going to have a situation very similar to this. So I'm just going to copy this over. And I'm going to change this from pending to approved. So if the verification status is approved, then we'll say your phone number has been verified. And here we can say there was an issue verifying your number. Please try again. Okay, they entered the code wrong or something along those lines. And this also we can wrap in a try catch just to catch any errors that we might get sending this out. So I'm just going to go put that right over there and have this error message show here as well. Whoops, format. Okay, so that should be enough to set up this phone verification. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and test it out. So I'm going to head into preview mode. Oh, I forgot to hide this over here. So this is going to be hidden. Go ahead into preview mode. And I'm going to pick my area code. So yeah, so this is why we have the kind of the lettering here as well, just to help people find their area code. And I am going to input my phone number here as well. So I'm just going to pause the video for 1 second. So that concludes our tutorial for today. As you saw, it was quite simple and straightforward to set up the verification. Twilio really gives quite good documentation and tools to streamline this process. And now you can take this OTP and integrate it in different parts of your website, whether you're trying to verify the identity of a person filling out a form, or if you wanted to use it for something more complex like member registration or logging in members to your website. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.